So this video is going to be focused on what I've mentioned several times in passing. There's kind of the implied meaning, but I really want to clarify the non-verbal and contextual elements of how we communicate in a public speaking context, but also just in general to help you form that foundational baseline, right? So essentially, when I say nonverbals, I'm typically referring to basically anything that isn't what we're speaking, the words that we choose, okay? So we really get focused on that. That's why everyone wants a script. The words, if we get the words just right, it will get my point across and everyone will understand what I say. But if you read studies that look really closely at what does and does not work when people are communicating publicly, personally, in whatever method that they're doing, right? You'll find the impact estimated for the spoken word, the exact words we choose, tends to range from I've seen it about 5% is the lowest point to up to 60%, but very rarely ever higher than that. More averaging in the 50% mark or less is what I see. I like to settle at about 30%. I think it gets the point across, but just understand these numbers are kind of arbitrary. It's a really difficult thing to measure. Language is a technology that is covering everything that we do, right? Everything is informed by the language that we use. And so the act of actually studying the language, you're using the language itself, it's like using a microscope to look at that same microscope. It's very difficult to do, right? So the numbers can be arbitrary. The point remains is that it's a lot less about just the words we choose and how those words are delivered. It's like a really good meal and the plate it comes on. If it doesn't have the plate, we don't really think of the plate when you're eating whatever your favorite food is. But if the plate's not there, the meal's going to be all over the place. And we realize that a really big part of our enjoyment of that meal is that it actually is on a plate, right? Otherwise, my steak on the floor, I like steak, but it's not going to do it for me. Okay. So our nonverbals, that has to do with our body language, which I'll talk through some elements of that, but also the setting, what's around us in the case of online presentations, the camera recording and shot in a more physical space where it is you are standing and you are speaking to your audience, even what time of day, right? The clothes you're wearing, if you're, put together and you've cleaned up, your hair's all nice and clipped together, if it's all a mess and discombobulated, all of that's going to come together into your nonverbal on whether your audience engages and trusts what you have to say, okay? So before I get into the details of that, I want to share the number one, and I talked about this in a previous video, the number one way that you can really have effective nonverbal communication, right? Just going straight to practical, is to just believe in or be interested in your main topic and what you want to deliver. That's why I talk so much about make sure your main topic isn't, I have to be here and talk, right? Even if you do, it happens. I get it. But don't let that be the focus. Your main topic should be something you believe in or you're interested in, and then you will believe in it, and everything about you will communicate that with you doing nothing at all right? So long as you're not too stressed or anxious, and that's a separate thing that can get in the way. But if you can get into a state where that you're not, overly curled in or worried about that, and we can work on that as a separate component, your nonverbals will just support you. Your tone will come through, your body language will come through, your facial expressions, all that stuff. And your audience will say, well, that person is clearly interested in this subject. So interested they're knocking their desk around. I should be interested too. I want to know more about that, right? And that interest will be powerful. But if you're not interested, it's pretty obvious. And I'm sure we can all think of those presentations where we had to watch in the past where it's like, and now we're talking about the thing that I have to talk about. It's like, okay, we'll do the thing, right? So just be interested and engaged in your topic. And you'd be amazed at how easy this can be if you really start practicing that awareness and that curiosity. Even if we initially what's interesting about this thing I have to do? Well, find it, because I bet it's there, right? More into the technical elements though. I wanted to give you that easy path first, right? Body language. Okay, so a few things. How we sit is a really big part of it, or stand in the context of we're presenting. Being straight, looking forward, all right? How we hold our body, so like shoulders up, talking to you. If I curl in, if I'm worried, if I'm, hunched around or leaning, all of that, it literally changes how I sound. It changes how I'm perceived. It really has a big difference. You want to make sure you're facing your audience. Easier when you're being recorded, right? But if you're just kind of off to the side, be like, yeah, I'm talking about the thing. Especially if you're in a physical environment, it's easy to accidentally, if you got a wider audience, you can shift to be facing them as you go. Face your audience. Try to make eye contact. That's a trust. At the very least, it's a perceived trust element. Whether how accurate it can or cannot be is a different discussion. But that is the expectation. Eye contact means trustworthy. Yeah, I'm talking about stuff means less trustworthy, right? So how you hold that body language up, standing straight, hands, pay attention to your hands where they are. At the very least, just keep them out of the way, out of the shot, or still at your sides, right? If you're in a physical location, make sure they're not fidgeting, wandering around, tugging. I see people tugging on hair. They got strings. They'll do a little whatever, a dance. They'll just be pulling on those. Their hands will be on their own hand adventure while they're talking. It has nothing to do. They'll be like, today I'm going to talk about my topic. It's about introducing myself to the audience and what I like, and just doing my thing. Has nothing to do with my hands. And they're just off on their own hand adventure. It's incredibly distracting, right? So at the very least, we want to make sure they're not getting in the way. And that's an easy first step. But eventually we can have them emphasizing and supporting. I like speaking with my hands to the point where I probably do it too much, but I like it. I think it works well for me. Generally, as a good rule of thumb, below the shoulders, above the waist when you're speaking live. Otherwise, kind of in a middle ground. For example, I'm recording, so right now this is my middle ground. This is up high, this is down low, clipping off the screen. Can't really see my hands, right? So adjust accordingly depending on your medium of delivery. But in a physical space, if you're up high, it's fine for a moment. This gets everybody's attention. Hey, everybody, look at me. My hands are up high, right? Like, they're above my head. That pulls attention. But if you're just doing it the whole time, it's just going to be like, why is his hands up there? I don't understand. It looks off, and it's going to draw the attention for too long, So you can adjust accordingly, but make sure you're aware. So if you're like pointing at people, right, maybe a little bit, but the pointing can be perceived as aggressive. So you can kind of keep the level hands out there. You can gesture towards, you can reinforce, you can, put an idea together. You can say the one thing or the two things, or on one hand this, on the other hand that. Lots of ways to do it. Right? Just the key is there's an intentionality to an extent behind it. But once again, being interested or excited goes a long way to making that just happen without you even really needing to think that much about it, right? Also, the movements of the body, where you're at. So, people get nervous, and so it's like, okay, I'm just talking about my presentation. Like, they'll start off small and it ends up being this like seesaw sway, or they'll, especially in a chair like this, I got my circular, I can rotate on here, I got my wheels I can go back and forth on. Just be aware of those little things. They can be distracting and they can get in your way. Learn to monitor them and raise your awareness. And it's something that even if it's not overnight, it will gradually improve the more you pay attention to it. A great way to build up your nonverbals is just to look at those people you hear and respect, and you're like, that person knows what they're talking about, right? And just see what they do. And that will help build what you want to deliver. In addition to how we hold ourselves physically, there is also the element of how we are perceived and how we present ourselves. And so part of that, make sure you're dressed appropriately for the event, okay? Make sure you are, clean. And that sounds very basic, but how you present yourself goes a long way to being taken seriously, especially in a professional context where they expect you to present formally, interview room, right? Just make sure all that comes into play. Take that time and location into account. You can't always adjust and plan for that, but just having the awareness, right? Having the awareness of like, okay, here is where, if you do control it, make sure you don't share anything really important when everyone's tired or hungry, okay? Whereas if you're speaking and people are going to be tired and hungry, well, what can you do to adjust to make yourself still be engaged, or at the very least be empathetic, And then finally, don't get stuck on doing it the right way. There's so many ways. To effectively use your nonverbals and other communication methods to engage your audience. And it just changes so much depending on what it is you're saying and who it is you're talking to. What might work great for one audience might be terrible for the next audience on the exact same topic, okay? So just keep an open mind, practice awareness, and monitor what works, what doesn't work, and when and where, and why you believe it to be effective. And it will be an ongoing process that will generate results for you as you practice your public speaking in the future. See you in the next video.